Hey friends and fellow VEDSies, welcome back to VEDS. So one of the cool things about looking at stories from your childhood is that you're able to look at your tastes from when you were a kid and see how they've changed and how they've stayed the same. And every now and again when I watch a new movie or show or whatever, I have the thought in the back of my head, man, I would have really loved this as a kid. And I think there are different levels to this, but it all starts with a baseline of quality. For example, a couple years ago, I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time. It was a show that was on when I was a kid, extremely popular, even now still well regarded, but I didn't watch a ton of cartoons as a kid. However, I kept getting recommended to it, and eventually a friend showed me the first couple episodes. Another friend let me borrow his copies of the seasons, and so I was able to really get into it. And while it's a show that I don't necessarily think watching it as a kid would make me enjoy it more, except maybe a little bit of nostalgia for it, I still think that if I had watched it as a kid, I would have really liked it. So if I could bundle it up and send it back in time, I would. Although it already existed back in time. I guess if I could force my younger self to watch. The scenario is getting too fraught, let's move on. The reason I wanted to start with something like Avatar is because there are also examples where I watch something and it's all right, but I know as a kid I would have loved it. And a good example of this is the How to Train Your Dragon series.
Whoa. Has anyone ever tried to train a dragon?
No one's ever lived to tell the tale.
It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you.
Or at least the first and the third one. I have not seen the second one. But it was a really well-made fantasy series, and one that as a kid I would have really dug into. I would have been able to really attach with the two characters who I swear their names will come to me eventually. Hiccup and Toothless. In a couple more minutes, I'll figure out which one was the dragon and which one was the person. But I would have been able to relate to those characters a lot more, be able to imagine myself in those scenarios maybe a little bit stronger than I do now. On top of the fact that it would have had this satisfying arc and conclusion, makes me think that as a kid, I would have loved it. Now I watch it and I'm like, yeah, it's okay, but there are other fantasy things I could be watching. I've definitely seen the kind of pieces that this pulls from in other things. But as a kid, just being more willing to go and escape into a fantasy world, I definitely would have enjoyed it. But then there's at least one more kind of category to this. Let's be honest, there's probably a lot more, but at least one more that I'm going to talk about today. Stories that would have made you a better person. Now I say that acknowledging that I'm not that bad of a guy. I mean, I certainly have some things to work on. But, I don't have this, tragic part of my life story where if I could have just slipped in this one story, suddenly my whole life would have been a million times better. But there are stories that I think could have taught me valuable lessons that I would have, liked to appreciate a little bit sooner. And the key example of this, to me, is Kiki's Delivery Service.
Maybe we better rethink our plan.
Frankly, I think this is a major insult. Crows used to serve witches and do what you told them.
That was a long time ago, okay?
I love this movie, y'all. It's my favorite animated movie of all time, and the more and more I think about it, the more and more it creeps up my favorites list even higher. For those of you who don't know, Kiki's Delivery Service is about a young witch named Kiki who goes off to live in a distant city as part of her training, but as she travels to the city, she quickly realizes she's not actually good at magic. And so as she tries to figure out her specialty and she realizes the only thing she can really do semi-well is fly, she's gonna become a delivery person. It's a really relaxing and sweet movie about a very resilient character who still feels all the pain and angst of adjustment to a new place. I watched it while I was in college, and yeah, when you go to college, you have all these aspirational ideas, but then you realize maybe you can't do all of those. That doesn't mean you give up, but it does maybe mean that you adjust them and that you adjust your strategy to completing them. And Kiki's Delivery Service taught me that lesson as an adult, but I think it could have taught me that a little bit earlier as a kid. Now, of course, it would be ridiculous to regret not seeing these stories or any other stories when you were younger. You came to a story at a particular time because of particular reasons. But it is a fun exercise to kind of watch things and figure out what you would throw into that care package of stories that you would be willing to send off to a younger version of yourself. Sometimes that's just because a story is so cool and awesome and you enjoy it now and you would have enjoyed it then. Sometimes it's because you see a story that you know you would have enjoyed then. It fit more to your tastes. And sometimes it's because a story is so impactful that you know it would have been helpful for you earlier on. And ultimately, it's just an exercise that lets you understand a story more. Not the particular story that you would send back, but the story of yourself. I'll see you tomorrow, friends and fellow VEDSies.